So the two of them were there trying to calm me down. I was in a zone. I was gone. So they had to call 911. Police came, brought me to the hospital. And I was happy at that point because I was like, good, yes, take me to the hospital. Like, I need help.
You get the highest of the highs and the lowest of the lows when you're, fighting in front of thousands of people. A lot of fighters, once they're done their career, they go to substances to try to get that same feeling, that same type of high. Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to episode 22 of the Good People, Bad Intentions podcast. And today is my guest. I have Leanne Richardson. Now, Leanne has a YouTube channel called Addicted to Happy, and there she makes videos mostly talking about alcoholism and addiction, and she talks about everything from identifying when and if you have a problem, some of the steps that you can take. She shows what 1 month of sobriety can do and what type of impact it can have on your life. And she also has a Sober City Halifax business. This service provides consultations to companies who are looking to make their menus more sober friendly, as well as she once a week has a meeting group where they talk for about an hour on Zoom and try to talk through their issues together. What you'll find from watching her videos is by no means, as Leanne says, stop drinking and alcohol is bad, etc. for everyone. But what she does do is identify a really big issue, especially in the area that we are in, which is in Nova Scotia, where there's a bit of a culture per se about alcohol. And it's something that, as a Nova Scotian, I haven't really talked to too much about. So if this is a topic that you find interesting, definitely find ways to tie it into boxing and mental health. And I'll also try to talk about some other topics, not just about that. But I think it's something that can apply to everybody. And I look forward to having this conversation. Without further ado, here's Leanne. Hey, welcome to the podcast, Leanne. Sorry, we had a little bit of technical difficulty, so we're going to rerun a little bit of the stuff that we had already talked about. And the first thing that I was kind of saying was the reason I kind of found out about you and your Addicted to Happy YouTube channel and the Sober City Halifax business that you're running is I saw you were doing some work on the Unreasonable Rob series by Pat Stay. And there's an incredible team. I love everybody there. Of course, I had Bradley Sullivan from the GM from East Coast Financing. He was on. And can you just talk about that experience working for that series?
Yeah, that was awesome experience, and it's only going to get better. Season 2, like, watch out. I'm so excited. But yeah, it basically started, I don't know, maybe a year and a half ago, when it was just for YouTube. They just did the series for YouTube. It was Pat and Mark Swatsky's vision. They were like, let's do it. We're funny. They killed it. I was just in one episode, and it was hilarious. It was amazing to work with those people. And I knew Mark for a while. I knew his wife. And he was like, well, Leanne, you're creative. You're into YouTube. Do you want to be part of this thing? And of course, yes. And then, and same with Pat, I went to school with his brother. So just from living in Dartmouth, you just know people. So it's like, of course, I'll join your thing. And then now with a better production, and with an actual budget and real cameras, real lighting, real audio. It was so freaking cool to be part of it in that way. And so I'll be in 3 episodes in this season 1 coming up. Not sure when it'll be released, but just to be in that environment with those people, so awesome. It gives me life.
Yeah. Is it somewhat reminiscent of, everybody's really proud about the Trailer Park Boys? Is it that type of humor where it's like nothing's really taken serious and it's just a very creative process? Can you describe, was there a lot of direction when you were there, or you were able to kind of branch out and do your own thing as your character?
Yeah, it's mostly all ad-libbing. because everyone's so funny. There's like legit comedians there. And sure, there's a script, there's direction as to like, okay, this is where the scene's going to lead. But overall, I mean, you don't really, I mean, for background, at least for me, I know for main characters, yes, they do have some lines they need to memorize. But for the most part, as long as you're saying, basically what you got to say, throw in whatever if you think this is going to be funny, okay, do it. There's one scene, I can't even remember what episode, but I was like, you know what? It'd be funny if I just screamed as loud as I could. And they're like, yeah, do it. So, environment like that. So it's like, I'm not sure how that would compare to Trailer Park Boys, but I feel like it's a lot of like just friends being funny type thing.
I think that's a really good atmosphere, especially for a series. And
Yeah.
I just want to see if you have any comments about we're both I'm located in Dartmouth, and you're located in Halifax, or
I'm in Dartmouth.
okay, awesome. I thought it'd be only natural to comment on because I was just visiting with my grandparents and my family in Yarmouth, and this streak that Mateo Roach has been on in the Jeopardy. Have you been following the Jeopardy going on
Yeah.
right now? I mean, we were talking about Pat Stay, one of the best battle rappers in the world right now, and it's looking like we might have one of the best Jeopardy players.
Yeah.
Cool.
Like it's amazing. There's so much good that comes out of Nova Scotia. It's it's awesome. I love it here. Like sure, I lived in Alberta for a while, like we all do, but
Mhm,
you always come back. I'm back. I'm
mhm.
I'm back for good.
Well, welcome back.
Thank you.
Uh, and hey, topics like this. I mean, this is like a boxing podcast. We have MMA people on. But one thing that's always a part of boxing, fighting, everything like that is the mental aspect. We talk about it all the time. Somebody like Teddy Atlas, he's a Hall of Fame coach and commentator for boxing. He was Mike Tyson's amateur coach. He thinks that boxing is 75% mental and then 25% physical. So
Mhm.
anybody like we're gonna have a wonderful discussion, and we're gonna talk about that, like things like addiction, mental health, etc. And I think establishing that stage, I mean, this is a very important topic for anybody, any walk of life, but especially I believe for boxing. Um, so you have this wonderful YouTube channel, Addicted to Happy, and I'm looking at just the titles and the subjects that come out, and really I feel like you cover every kind of base as far as somebody who's trying to better themselves. Maybe they haven't they are an alcoholic, or they're struggling with addiction. You have videos such as your most recent one, Are You an Alcoholic? You kind of talk about the different levels and stages of identifying yourself, to the point where you really have to see a professional at a certain stage to see if you're another level. um, can you just talk about your journey, getting to the point where you are, where you're comfortable sharing these things, sharing these life experiences? Because I can't imagine it was easy at the beginning to do this.
No, and that's why I have that focus more on my YouTube channel around when people are thinking about getting sober or when they just get sober. So that's what or that's usually what my videos are about, is people in that stage. Because that's how I was in the beginning, is that I wanted to get all the information I possibly could. And leading up to quitting drinking, I was secretly Googling, sobriety and all that kind of stuff. So that's who I generally try to gear towards in my YouTube. And yeah, you can't have health without mental health. And a huge part of mental health is, well, alcohol in our culture, and especially here in Nova Scotia. But I mean, across really in North America, and anywhere really, it's alcohol is everywhere. And I mean, it's a poison, and it's so easy to slip into feeling like you need it for to have fun, to celebrate, or when you're sad or when you're stressed. It's so easy to fall into that trap. So it's 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 easy to just get swept away with it and then realize, like, when you're in your 30s and think back, like, oh my goodness, I've been drinking since I was 13 years old. So I think a lot of people don't really think of it that way, and I think a lot of people should. And so that is mostly too why I started my YouTube channel, because it's funny. It's a thing when people get sober, where they just want to tell everybody about it,
Hmm.
and not try to push it on people. But we're just so excited that when we're sober, we're like, my God, you guys, this feels so great. Like, you got to try it too. So that's sort of the perspective too of my YouTube channel in that way, and sharing my story, really, because I've heard that it's relatable and inspiring, like, which is weird to say, but yeah, it is, and that's where I started, is on YouTube, and I'm still there today. Yeah.
Yeah, I just, before this episode, or before this podcast started, I wanted to make sure I refreshed on some of your key videos. I did watch kind of the paranormal experience that you talked about, but then just in general, like the story about the last night that you drank and everything like that. You had a very supportive roommate, who was able to kind of be there for you, and really, like you said in the video, it's not like somebody hadn't offered that before, but you felt like maybe they were more sincere, or they had a background that made you want to. And you mentioned too, like, she was with one of your other friends at the time. They both came, they were there. I thought it was just a very beautiful story, because you included a lot of stuff, including visuals, photos, where it made it, for me watching it, it became real. You showed the apartment that you were at, you showed the life that you were at, in contrast to now. And I thought it was a very, very well done video.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And that's exactly what I wanted someone to say after watching that video. And you did. So I nailed it, I guess, then. Because, yeah, visuals, that's huge for me. Like,
Mhm.
when I'm hearing someone's stories, I want to see the picture of the apartment. And the picture I show in that video is the exact spot where the police officer stood. I can say a super quick synopsis
Yeah.
of that night if you need, since, people, if they're listening, like, okay, what's going on? So yeah, the video you were just talking about was where I talk about the last night that I drank. And yes, briefly, I wasn't even planning on quitting drinking that night that I went out, March 2nd, 2014. It was like any other night. I went out with a good friend. But for like a year leading up to that last night, whenever I drank, I would get like a weird, demented headspace where I wanted to fight or smash things or something extreme, because I had so much pent up rage inside. It was mostly rage, lots of other
Mhm.
things too, but so much pent up stuff. So that night, that happened again, where I was drunk. I had that I want to destroy things mentality. And so I went home, and I also too, leading up to that, I was a little suicidal or had suicidal ideations. And so that night when I went home, I was alone. My roommate was gone, and I had that in my head. Okay, I'm gonna destroy something, myself or something. I wanted to destroy myself. So, but as you said, my roommate, lots of people have said before, and I'm sure in anyone's lives, if you ever need me, I'm here. Just someone call away. Okay, we've all heard that before. But that night, I was like, okay, my roommate said that, but I feel like, yeah, she was more genuine, or something was different. So that was the first time in my life where I was in a crisis mode and I called somebody or I texted, and she was home. She came home immediately. That night, it was a lot of self harm, basically, and I could have ended it all right then. That's why I called her, because I think there was a part of me was like, no, no, Leanne, you don't want to end it all. Like, this is serious. So she came home immediately, her and our friend Nick, bless his heart. I love him so much. And so the two of them were there trying to calm me down. I was in a zone, I was gone. So they had to call 911. Police came, brought me to the hospital. And I was happy at that point, because I was like, good, yes, take me to the hospital. Like, I need help. I wanted to go to like a psych ward or something, or detox. I didn't know what I wanted. All I knew was that shit hit the fan, something bad was going to happen, or I didn't know what to do. I was just stuck. And then so that was the last night that I drank. I went to the hospital. Nothing really came of that. I ended up leaving. They weren't very helpful at all. It's sort of a issue I have. Like, the emergency department, at least in 2014, wasn't really helpful, even though I was covered in wounds. You'd think but nope. Anyway, went home. Next morning, woke up and was like, you know what? Nope, that I'm done. I'm never drinking again. And now 8 years later, I haven't drank, and I don't plan on it ever again for the rest of my life. Crazy to say, but it's true. So
Well,
yeah.
I want to congratulate you on that, because I know not a lot of people can say that, especially with a disease like alcoholism. And from everything that I've gathered, and maybe you agree with this or you don't, once you're an alcoholic, it's a forever battle. There's always these temptations, and you spoke about kind of the culture, and it's something that I'd like to go back to, because we're both from relatively the same area. I'm originally from Yarmouth, but now I'm living in Dartmouth. We have probably the most bars per capita in Canada here. The alcohol culture. I mean, I'm so proud of the fact that we do have like these really cool places people can hang out and stuff like that, in pubs. I'm cool. It's really cool that we have these different brands. But what's not really spoken about a lot is the dependence that a lot of us have on alcohol, especially in our earlier years. And a lot of bad things can happen, and certainly when I was growing up, I heard stories from my parents and everything like that about so and so, a person who was out drinking and lost their life really young.
Yeah.
And was there ever with this brand that you're starting, has there been a moment where you had to look at where you're from and this type of culture and have to try to break it? Or has it been hard for you to do this, because it is very much a part of our day-to-day lives?
Yeah, it really is. And that the reason of, we're a port city. We have so many universities here. We're craft breweries everywhere. So that fact was what I leaned on for years, for that to be my excuse why I can't quit drinking. Because my mom would always say, like, oh, alcoholism runs in the family. You really got to slow down. Like, it's one thing to be going to the Dome and Palace, a toothy moose every Saturday in your 20s. Like, sure, that's one thing. But like, I'm talking about, like, it's creeping into your Thursday wing nights. It's creeping into like Sunday because you feel like crap, so you need to drink in order to make the anxiety go away. It's starting to become a thing. And so yeah, that makes it, of course, more of a problem. But to say that to someone who lives in Nova Scotia or in a culture where it's friggin' everywhere, to say that, like, hey, you got to slow down, is like, what? We don't slow down here. Like, this is what we do. So I had to remember that piece when I created Sober City. And Sober City is mostly just like a community. It's like how to meet other sober people in Halifax mostly. And so I have to keep that in mind, because there's so many things working against us meaning sober people, or us meaning people who want to cut down drinking, not so much, and to drink more healthily. It's an oxymoron, but you know what I mean. Because there's so many things, yeah, working against us, like bars. You go to a bar or a restaurant and you want to order non-alcoholic drinks, but they're not on the menu. So you then have to ask the server in front of everybody at the table, like, hey, so like, what do you have for non-alcoholic drinks? Then everyone's like, hold up, record scratch, like, you're not drinking. Whereas if it was just on the menu, you could just say, oh yeah, I would like a Beck Zero, or I would like a whatever mocktail it is, and no one would know. So it's like little things like that. It could just be more easier for us when we go out and drink. But it's catching on, man. I'm seeing so many more people take a month off and be like, this feels great, and just keep going and going. So there's more and more of us out here who aren't drinking, and it's awesome. It's so much awesome. It just makes you happier and feel better on so many levels. It's great.
And I wanted to speak on this. With both of us, we probably have experience and everything like that. Of course, you also have some personal experience. And I don't want to mention any names or anything like that, but I wanted to say from my point of view, growing up, I had a lot of people in my life that had addictions, whether it was alcohol or other things. And that really shaped me as a person early on. I'm somebody who doesn't drink or do anything at this moment, not because I'm against it or anything like that. Just I feel like for me, I had all this stuff growing up, and I've always had a view now where I hate being around people drinking. I don't know if you've ever had that feeling, and maybe when you're going through recovery, you have that feeling, but there's a lot of there's a lot of good that happens, especially friends being around each other, but there can be some bad things, fights happening at parties and things like that. um when you in your sorry, was it 8 years of sobriety
8.
now?
Mhm.
In your 8 years of sobriety, when you're looking now at the parties and things like that, are you seeing these things that maybe you weren't seeing when you were partaking?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, one thing, I don't go out half as much as I used to,
Mhm.
so I don't have much chances to see. But yes, the first thing that comes to my mind is something weird that not a lot of people would really think about. But I noticed I was, I don't know, maybe 2 months sober, and I went to a live show. I would always go to live shows, of course, very drunk. I'd end up in the mosh pit or wherever I was, just fully immersed. But 2 months sober, I went back and saw a show, and my God, I could smell everything. I could see everything. I could hear everything. All my senses were heightened, which of course, so
Mhm.
looking back, you're like, okay, when you're drunk, everything's a blur, everything's fun, colors, who cares? But sober, my God, I could smell everybody and it was weird. So that's one thing.
Mhm.
But in terms of feeling, yeah, it's night and day. Um, and more so now that I'm 8 years sober, it's different in the earlier stages, you're jealous. You're like, I want to drink too. Like, I'm so envious of you. I'm sad. But now I'm like, I don't care. Whatever. You have fun, drunk person. Um, but I feel like most people would say what you said, that being around drunk people, it's like annoying, or like, my God, like this is like, you look stupid, or what. I'm not saying you said that, but a lot of people think that way. And I feel like I'm an anomaly, whereas I've never felt that way. Even now, 8 years sober, I see drunk people, it doesn't bother me. It's just I'm happy that they're having fun. It sounds so cliche, but I truly mean it. Like I was at the rap party for Unreasonable Rob just a week and a half ago or whatever, and so a few people asked me like, "How are you here sober? Isn't it annoying?" Like, no, not at all. I'm so happy that everyone's having fun. You're just in it, and just being around the people, that gives me life. That ups my endorphins and dopamine, no longer needing the alcohol. But man, the first couple of years, no, I wouldn't feel that way. It was sad and I was jealous. And so I'd have to leave early, when people got to that level. But anyway, very different night and day.
And I have a question too. Just a curiosity on the topic. When you're a recovering alcoholic and then you put yourself out there in those public ventures, is there people in the sidelines that are like, is this person back to their old ways? Or like how do you battle those demons? Because you can have a good, like you said, you were at this party, you're having a good time. I think people maybe correlate having a good time with drinking. And do you have any messages towards those people that are, I don't know, did you have any detractors maybe, or people that doubted you that you had to prove wrong?
Some people, yes. It's funny because you'll get a whole spectrum when you get sober, no matter who you are, I swear, you'll get a spectrum of people saying like, "What are you doing getting sober? Like you're not an alcoholic. What are you trying to get attention? Like you don't have a problem. This is dumb." And then other people are like, "Great, for health reasons. That's good. Go with it." And then other people are like, "Okay, I know you're pretty bad, but like pretty sure you're gonna go back to drinking." And so yeah, so to prove a lot of those people wrong, thankfully I don't have many of those people in my life that I know
Good.
of. But I know some other people would, especially people who have quit drinking in the past and then went back and quit and went back. So of course, people around them are gonna be like, "Oh, here we go again." Like let's just see how long this lasts. So really, all you can do is keep proving people wrong. And thankfully, I didn't really have to do much of that really at all. But um, yeah, and that's the same thing that I would tell people around who say it's hard to go out and be social when you're sober. Yeah, it friggin' is. But like the more you do it, the more confidence you get after you do it and you make it through. You wake up the next morning, you feel great. So that's a little confidence notch. Keep proving people wrong over and over and over again. Eventually, that inner confidence, that inner knowing that you're not breaking promise yourself anymore, the shame finish, all that stuff. So just keep doing it over and over and over again. And it just keeps getting easier and so much better.
Thank you for sharing everything that we've talked about that. And I wanted to, I think at the beginning, I wanted to get your story out there. Again, everybody, if you go to the Addicted to Happy YouTube channel, uh, you do a brilliant job kind of explaining your story, giving advice, giving tips, giving people those resources that they need, that work for you and that can definitely work for them. And I thought it'd only be fair if you're going to talk about something that you struggle with or you have struggled with in the past, that I should also share something that I struggle with, to have it a 50-50 conversation.
Yes, please.
So for me,
Yes.
my major addiction is food. Food has been
Hmm.
something that's really held me back in a lot of pursuits, especially when it comes to boxing, to being taken serious by other people and everything like that. And I want to say that when I was younger, I had a really high metabolism. I could eat whatever I want. And I had some kind of weird thing too, where I was a really picky eater growing up, and it caused a lot of issues in and of itself. But really, when I was growing up, about every year I gained about 20 pounds. And the way I dealt with a lot of issues in my past and everything like that, and then with school, is I used food to feel good about myself. I would eat, and in fact, I wouldn't feel good about myself in the end because I was getting bigger and bigger, and people were noticing it. And here we are now, 2022, and it's kind of snowballed in a way. And I guess this is something that a lot of people deal with, and it's obesity is on a rise, in this country and in most countries. Um, and we had a bit of a private conversation, and basically what I understood is that everybody, including me and you, have a struggle with food and everything like
Hmm.
that. Um, and I was just wondering, can you maybe talk about your experience as well, so we can have a level conversation where we're talking about something that we both deal with?
Sure. Yeah, around food, certainly. And this is something that, yeah, I've struggled with my whole life, as well. And especially when I first quit drinking.
Mhm.
Because I mean, I just ate my feelings instead because it
Mhm.
made me feel so good to eat. So so much what you said resonates with me completely. And I recently just lost 25 pounds, because of, thank you, because I gained about 25 after quitting drinking, and then more depression and snowballed. Yeah, and I was like, okay, let's get back to how I feel the best, and which is now. It took me a year, but it took so long because I've always had issues around food. Self-diagnosed with orthorexia, where I felt like I needed friggin' 30 rules around food, and if I strayed outside those rules, I was all these bad things. So my list of foods that I was allowed to eat was so small, and if I ate dairy or sugar or cold foods or whatever was on my list of no, if I did that, then that would mean I failed. I'm never going to have a baby. No one's ever going to love me. All these ridiculous things that have nothing to do with that. So it took me a year to lose the 25 pounds, whereas other people that could take them less time. But that doesn't matter because I needed to get my mind with it too, because that is so hard. Sure, anyone could eat at a caloric deficit, go to the gym, do all that, but to make your mind do it too is can be unbelievably difficult. And people, same with alcohol, same with any addiction, it can be so ridiculously hard. So, and for many people it could take, geez, decades to figure out, and you learn a little bit more about yourself as you go, and that's where I'm at. It's just where I happen to be on my journey right now around food. I think I'm good, but still, man, it can get bad easy.
Yeah, and I wanted to kind of touch on something because it was a really interesting time with me, because about a year ago, I was in like mere year and a half ago, I was in the best shape of my life. I was training twice a day boxing during the pandemic. I had a really good system at home with another guy, and then kind of everything kind of fell through with this arrangement I had with this person, and I started doing online schooling. So I was at home sitting down for like 12 hours with schoolwork and everything like that, eating whatever I wanted. And just, I remember when I first started making my steps back into boxing after like a year off or everything like that. And I'm not joking. I couldn't walk for 5-10 minutes without extreme back pain. And I was like, what is this?
Hmm.
And I felt like the mountain that I had to climb to get back to where I was maybe too great, and you might as well give up. Well, you still have some pride left, right?
Mhm.
And I really appreciate you sharing me that information about you, because I'm really proud of you for losing that weight that you wanted to, and working on yourself in that regard, because I struggle with it every day. And I
Mhm.
think for me too, kind of touching on some of your restrictions and everything like that, I have this thing, like I'm almost like a perfectionist when it comes to diets and things like that. So I'll start something, some type of plan, and it's really complicated, and I don't have the skills necessary to discipline myself in that respect. And then maybe 3 or 4 days go through, and then I mess up on one thing, and then I just tell myself, you know what, I messed up, so I'm just gonna like throw away the whole entire thing. I don't know why I do that. It then really follows with some binge eating, then feeling
Mhm.
bad about myself, and then it being a bit of a cycle.
Oh
um
yeah.
is this something that you've also experienced?
Oh yeah. I'm 38 now, and I feel like I finally don't do that anymore.
Mhm.
Like only over the past year though.
Mhm.
But so for the first, I don't want to say the first 37 years of my life, because I wasn't like this when I was a toddler, but you know what I mean? Up until the age of 37, I would have a bad day, or I would eat McDonald's, and then I'd be like, well, I fucked it up. And then so what's the point of continuing? Or sure, you continue a little bit. You're saying it's okay. Skip back up the next day. And you would for a bit, but then it would always be in the back of your head that like, yeah, but like, man, I ate an entire bag of smart food, which I did 2 nights ago, because I still get bingy sometimes. But I don't know what it is, but even now, I'm like, yeah, that's okay, because I'm back now into my regular way of eating. Sure, my macros are a little bit off right now, but that's okay. And I think I can say that because I'm seeing the numbers. By day, I'm in engineering, I'm a data analyst. So,
Really?
yeah, this is my
Okay.
side thing.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
So I
Okay.
see the
Okay.
numbers. I've been tracking. I can see the numbers of what happens when I go over my caloric deficit for like 2 weeks at a time. What happens? Not that much in the long range of things. So when I really looked at it like that, I was like, you know what? That's okay if I feel like I'm discouraged for like a solid 2 weeks, because if I just get back into it, then it's okay. I can get back to where I was. It for some reason, I don't know. I don't know if I conquered it or what, but I feel like I'm sort of over that piece. And you will too. You really will too someday. I don't know what it will take, but like that friggin' cycle of like binging, and then you feel like shit, and you feel the shame, and then you're discouraged, and all that kind of, I still get a little of it, but you won't be like that forever. I'll tell you that right now. You won't.
I want to tell you a little triumph that I've had, not losing that much weight in that period of time, but I had went through a 20-day of no takeout at all, which was very difficult for me actually. And I was, like I said earlier in the episode, I was visiting home, so I had to break that, just driving home and get something to eat there. But I'm really excited to continue this process. And a previous guest of mine, Sandy Pembroke, that I had on, who's had his own supplement store in the past. He's going to help me as far as being a support in this endeavor. But I'm looking at being more progressive, if that makes sense. Like instead of just telling myself, as you said with your condition, like 30 rules about how to eat, starting off with just basic changes and then building on top of that. That's like the no takeout thing. Obviously, just because you don't have takeout doesn't mean you're going to eat healthy food. I understand that, but building upon that, that's my goal for And I felt after the 20 days, I was like very empowered. I felt like, because I'm only 24 years old, and there's times where I feel like I'm a 16-year-old in my head, like I feel like still a kid. And I finally felt like I was making the right steps to be the person that I want to be at 24 years old.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm
And
really
that's it
excited.
right there. Sure, it's a small thing. Let's just take out. No, man, that's the freaking achieving a goal. That does so much. So when people are like, "Oh, walk up, just switch to walking upstairs instead of the escalator or whatever," like that's not going to do anything. It will if you conquer that goal and continue with that goal. There's so much to be said for the mental aspect of it rather than the physical aspect. Even though the physical part of no takeout, that's still going to be pretty big though too. But anyway, yeah, goal. My God, that's what it is achieving goals. It's huge.
Now we talked while we were having those technical difficulties. You had mentioned that once a week you have Zoom calls where you kind of create a space for people that are struggling with addiction to be.
Mhm.
Can you kind of touch a little bit? I mean, obviously these are probably very confidential conversations that you're having, but can you just kind of talk a little bit about that and maybe the impact it's had on other people,
Sure.
including
Yes.
yourself?
Yeah. Oh, for sure. Yeah. Yeah. They're the Sunday morning, basically like sobriety chats through Sober City that I've been putting
Mhm.
on now for, I don't know, about a year and a half. And yeah, every Sunday, anyone can join as long as they have the Zoom link. And it's anywhere between 3 to 10 people, which is nice. It's nice and tight knit. And I treat it basically, it's for an hour. It's
Mhm.
just as if we're all sitting around a table talking about our wins for the week or what we're nervous about. And it's always around sobriety.
Mhm.
And a lot of people really love that approach because in other meetups, like, with like 12 step groups, a lot of people don't really like that because they feel like it's too structured or things
Mhm.
like that. So I made sure to have the Sunday meetups be non-structured and just talk, just be normal people. And so I think that approach speaks to a lot of people, and I get so much good feedback. And I've cried many times in those meetups just from pure pride from
Mhm.
hearing these people speak, because there's a lot of regulars who come, and I've seen a lot of these people who started when they just quit drinking or they were still drinking sometimes, and to see them grow and to see them be able to articulate their feelings. That's one thing that you find is that when you stop numbing, you start to have feelings again, but then you don't know how to articulate how you feel. But with practice, you get better at it. So just witnessing that in a lot of the regulars that come and the new people too, to hear people struggle and then not struggle the next time they come, and say that just hearing like little tips from other people in the group has helped them. But yeah, it's amazing. I love it. And even for my own sobriety, it's good to just to remember that being sober is great, even though cravings happen sometimes. It's a good reminder that, I'm on the right path, and helping other people. it- It's it's unlike anything I've ever done my whole life. It I've said it before, I'll say it again, it gives me life. I don't want to overuse that phrase, but it really does. It makes my soul happy to help.
And I wanted on the vein of talking with people online. I wanted to kind of. I'm part of a bunch. Do you understand the app Discord?
A little bit. I know it's
Okay.
complicated, but yeah.
Yeah. So it's like uh we can have a bunch of different topic channels where people can join in voice chats, video chats, text chats, etc. And this was about a week ago, and the subject of addictions and everything like that had come up, so I thought it would be really interesting to discuss it here, because there's this guy, he was saying that he met a bunch of people online, and he realized that their behavior or whatnot was not healthy, quote unquote. And he was wanting to become a psychologist and everything like that, studying it in school. But he came from a point, and I had brought it up when he was discussing this whole situation. He came from a point where he was making a judgment. He was judging these people just because he thought that it was wrong or everything like that. And it made me think to myself, all these people that do make judgments about people that have addictions or who suffer from alcoholism, who haven't gone through it themselves, they don't come from a place of empathy. Can you kind of talk a little bit about that piece where it's important to be empathetic towards other people, especially in their recovery?
Yes, because you're right. So many people just don't get it around addiction because they've never had to experience it. And of course, you can't really have empathy unless you've been through it.
Hmm.
But it doesn't have to be that direct. Like you've been through hard times, so you can
Hmm.
surely empathize in that way. And I feel like education, of course, same with anything, education is going to be key here because I think a lot of people see addiction as well, they're choosing to do it. Okay, they're choosing like I was choosing to drink all the time and make all these dumb decisions and all that in my 20s. So then of course I've encountered all the negative consequences because it was my choice to drink. Sure, yeah, in a way, but overall no, because once the addiction monster has a hold of you, it's you just surrender and alcohol makes the decisions for you. Same with really any addiction, but I mean I can only speak to alcohol addiction and some drug addiction um, that I have some experience with, but so but that's from my perspective is that it takes a hold of you and you forget who you were or who you are more and more as time passes, and you break promises to yourself of like, okay, I'm not going to drink this weekend, and then you do, or I'm not going to get too fucked up for my sister's wedding, and then you do, and you smash into the cake. So you do all these things. You keep breaking promises to yourself, and the guilt and the shame builds and builds and builds, and then the alcohol takes over and makes more and more of your decisions. So to tell somebody in that state that like, well, you're choosing it, like you don't deserve, you know, any of my sympathy. Sure, you can feel that way, but really think about it. That's not them choosing that that's how they want to live their life. I didn't choose to want to break all the hearts that I broke in my 20s. I didn't choose to steal, lie, and cheat. Like, you know, I mean, I did it, yes, but that wasn't me. And now that I quit drinking, then I'm back to my old self again. And looking back, I'm like, that wasn't me, you know? But yeah, empathy, man, that's empathy and education are the two things more people need. And if you don't know, just err on this on the side of don't be mean about it. Just like, you know what? I don't know anything about this. I'm just gonna say, good luck to you. You know, just try that.
When you mentioned that your job, your main job is data engineering. To be honest, I wasn't expecting that because I was thinking to myself, I'm seeing all these strengths you have. You're talking about your story. You're helping people and supporting them. Um, is there any aspects of your data, your work with data that you've been using with YouTube or with the Sober City? Because I'm thinking too, a lot of people write people off, especially when they have addictions, because of the statistics, because of the fact that a lot of people will go back to being addicted again to certain substances. Can you kind of talk from the data side, maybe your how you view everything that you're doing?
Yeah. And yeah, the numbers they're not good for people who eventually might relapse or have a slip. It happens more often than not. I'm one of the lucky ones who have 8 full years of continuous sobriety. That doesn't happen very often. But it's happening more and more that I'm seeing. But yeah, in terms of data analysis, I went to school. It's funny. I quit drinking at 30,
Mhm.
and then I was like, you know what? I gotta get my life around. So I went back to school, and then that I chose industrial engineering, went into that. And so it was like snowballed. I wanted to feel better and do better things with my life. I didn't want my life to end anymore. So I was like, I feel like I had a like something happened where had a renewed sense of I want to live and make my life the best it possibly can. So I was like, you know what? I like engineering and data and numbers and make improvements. So I chose to go back to school for that. But still, there was always that thing in the back of my head of like, you know what? I want to help people. So yeah, I have the technical side and then I have the creative side. And so far, it seems to be working. I mean, having the data analysis background and process improvement background helps in, of course, in YouTube analytics. I'm able to read my stats better and to be able to make more money on YouTube, which, by the way, I'm not making really much of anything at all on there. It's really just to help people. That's my number one goal rather than monetary. But and having that background also too helps with my business of Sober Cities. So it helps in lots of different ways and in improving processes and improving the process of life. You can just apply it in that way. So yeah, it's great that all day today I was looking at Excel all day, looking at part numbers and all this technical stuff, and then after work I get to talk about something I love. So it's freaking great.
And I've been very appreciative of you coming on, because I think, and kind of an end piece that I want to touch on, I think that what we've discussed really has some bearing on what a lot of people that are listening have, whether it's they experience themselves or they have family members, loved ones that are going through this, or maybe if it's something like what we mentioned about the eating, because that's certainly something that I really struggle with, and the fact that trying to take control of our lives and everything like that. But what I wanted to ask is, can you share with everybody maybe some of the best steps and resources that they can make, the first step that they can make if they have identified that some of the stuff we've talked about is a real problem?
Yeah. And how one can even figure out if they even have a problem
True.
is well, I mean, but you can watch one of my videos where I talk about the
True.
different levels. There's
True.
risky drinking, there's problematic, and then there's up to the level of like, okay, you have alcohol use disorder. So say someone is like, okay, things are starting to get a little out of hand. So what can you do? Well, first off, educate yourself. Watch YouTube videos on channels like mine when people talk about their story or talk about cutting back or whatever it is. Read books if that's your thing. Just give yourself as much knowledge and good stories around people basically overcoming or working through. So start with that, and then really just pay attention to your drinking. Pay attention to not only how much you drink, but what happens after you drink the next day. Like when you have a hangover, are you super anxious? Do you have anxiety for 2 days after you drink? So pay attention to that. And like, why are you drinking? Are you nervous? Do you have social anxiety? That was my thing. Or are you sad? So you want to drink to feel alive again. So just pay attention to why you're drinking, what happens after you drink, and to start small. Same with around food. For a lot of people, it helps to do little steps, and it really actually does do something. That approach works great for a lot of people. So don't drink beer, say, or whatever it is, or try to cut back to only like once a week. Switch it up for some non-alcoholic drinks. There's a lot of them out there now that are good. So try it that way. Other people like me, I can't do small steps. It has to be big. So if you're a person like that as well, then I would say, okay, well, just take a month off of drinking, take 90 days, whatever it is, just do it. And I have resources on my website, sobercity.ca, and on my YouTube channel on what happens when you take a month off and things like that. So just know yourself, pay attention, and just go for it, really would be my advice on that.
Hey, I really want to appreciate you taking time out of your day, coming on here. Bunch of boxing, martial arts people.
Yeah.
This may be like I said early on, with the mental aspect of fighting, and the fact that we are all human beings and we all can go through these types of challenges in our life. I really thought it was important to have somebody like you on here to share the message, and to hopefully, if somebody's listening to that and they see parts of themselves they want to change, know that they can. And yeah, I really want to congratulate you also on you shared your story, but you've really shared a very positive note of being able to take control of your life in that aspect, and I really appreciate you coming on.
Thank you. Yeah, it's great. And yeah, at first I was like, well, I mean, sure. I know a little bit of MMA, not really, but like I mean, I guess I could, but no, it's mental health, it's addiction. It's
Yes.
huge. And before we started talking today, I was like, okay, I'm just going to brush up on some numbers here, and I looked more into the side of what alcohol does for people who are more athletic. And I mean, a lot of it I already knew. Of course, alcohol makes you dehydrated. It messes with your sleep, all that kind of stuff, but it actually impairs muscle growth. It has I wrote a note down here because I was so surprised. It diminishes human growth hormone by 70% if you have a over excessive night of
Hmm.
drinking.
Hmm.
So then, of course, that leads to lower recovery, all that kind of stuff. So I was really surprised. I mean, that's really interesting part of it is that sure, I know alcohol messes with your hormones, but man, if you want gains, alcohol is a surefire way to make sure you don't get gains because it will literally make it so that your muscles don't grow and your recovery is suffers. So I'm glad I looked into that before this because now I think that's going to be my next YouTube video, or at least it's going to be on the
What?
list. It's on the
Getting
list
the
of
exclusive here.
that's going to be I'd say probably next month you'd see a video on my YouTube channel all around yeah, the body and people who are more into physical health, how alcohol affects them in that way, because that is so interesting. I learned a lot. So
I don't know the stats on this, but I've heard a lot of hearsay about this. But there's a lot of people, professionals, and this is talking about boxing as a sport or mixed martial arts. You get the highest of the highs and the lowest of the lows when you're, fighting in front of thousands of people. And what is known is that apparently a lot of fighters, once they're done their career, they go to substances to try to get that same feeling, that same type
oh,
of high. And it's no surprise somebody like Mike Tyson, Oscar De La Hoya, all these big names, Sugar Ray Leonard, have all had their battles with addiction. And I have books on Mike Tyson's and talking about his addiction. And then of course we have our brave men and women that go across the world to fight in these terrific wars. And when they come back, they become a lot like a fighter. They become less of themselves. They put part of themselves out, and they leave it there when they come back to their loved ones and their family. And a lot of people try to use these substances to deal with a lot of difficult stuff. And yeah, it can become a problem.
yeah, exactly. To deal with, to cope. Like that's one of the hugest things is yeah, to learn how to cope with all the feelings you have inside, good or bad.
Hmm.
So alcohol is great for that. But in the long run it isn't.
No.
And dealing with yeah, to how to cope and how to numb. And so those are two things that if you have a lot going on in your head, you're gonna want to do. But yeah, there's so much healthier ways around that. But yeah, and you hear that all the time. And like Olympians, when they're done training, they're like, okay, well now what? You want to feel that you need that dopamine rush, and
Hmm.
yeah, alcohol and drugs is that's a real quick way to do it. But yeah, in the long run, good Lord, no. Like it's all you got to find a balance. If you're so one way, like focused on one thing, other things in your life can start to diminish. So you just got to always just be self-aware. Like that's the number one thing for any human. Just pay attention to what you're doing and why you're doing it and what happens when you're done doing the thing, and then plan accordingly. And yeah, just
And
be better.
I think you had a very healthy perspective that I want to try to put more into my own perspective, because I feel like when I'm around a lot of people that are drinking or doing other things, I kind of look at my past and I shell up like a kid again. And I love what you said about, not discouraging the fact that there's other people that are having fun and everything like that. I mean, albeit still there could be people that have issues that, they might need help. But for people that are just enjoying themselves, and alcohol isn't a bad thing, it seems like from your understanding, like you have no problems with it, that people can still live their lives and everything like that. It's only when it becomes a problem that you try to extend your hand and give them the resources that they need.
Pretty much, yeah. And like, 'cause I still know most of my friends still drink,
Hmm.
and And I'm sure there's a lot of them out there that are like, oh, I bet you Leanne's judging me. Leanne has a whole freaking YouTube channel about not drinking. Not at all, man. I will not judge you if even if someone has who clearly is living with an alcohol use disorder, even when they're, blackout, pass out, drunk all the time, like I'm still not going to judge you. I'll feel bad. I'll feel empathetic. I'll be like, shit, man, I remember what that felt like, and I'll have nothing but extra love for that person if I see they're struggling. And I'll always say, I'm there. If you ever just want to chat, we'll just text for a few hours. That's happened many times where someone just like, can I just like, yes, of course, no judgment for real. Even if you still drink, doesn't matter. I don't want it in my body. It's poison. I don't want it. No, thank you. But if you want, fucking go ahead, man. Just pay attention. If you don't want it anymore, well, make the steps to make it go away or make it easier on yourself.
Thank you so much, Leanne, for coming on.
Yes, thank you
I
for having me. It's great.
I really appreciate it, and hope you have a good rest of your day.
Thank you. You too.
And everybody, I hope you enjoyed this podcast. As I had said at the beginning, this podcast may not be that focused on fighting in and of itself. Mental health is a huge focus of mine and something that I want to be a part of the podcast. As I've said many times, Teddy Atlas believes that boxing is 70% mental and 30% physical. And indeed, we all have our own struggles. You heard my struggle with food. If it's something that you also struggle with, make sure to, send a message to me. We can talk about this topic. It's a very difficult thing for a lot of people, including myself, but it's something that I want to put out there. I wanted this conversation to not just be about what Leanne has gone through, but I also wanted to share something that I went through as well. And of course, she has a lot of great resources on her YouTube channel, as well as the Sober City website, in which if anything that we've talked about strikes a chord with you and you want to look into it further, maybe it's for not even just for you, but for a loved one, for a friend, there's so many resources. It's such a great opportunity having her on the podcast. And as always, folks, if you're watching this on YouTube, make sure to like, comment, and share the video. If you're listening to this on one of your favorite podcast platforms, make sure to give an honest review about what you thought about the podcast, and make sure to also subscribe so that way when a new episode comes out, you don't miss it. As always, everybody, hope you have a good time, whatever time you're listening to this. And until next time, have a good day.